Well, welcome to this video on Chapter 11 of the book How and Why Homeschool Math Can Be Vastly Superior to Public School Math. I'm Craig Hain. I'm the CEO of Triad Math. You can learn all about me at my website, craighain.com. And this is Chapter 11 of the book. And the title of the chapter is Financial Facts of Life. And this is really aimed at young adults. In fact, I consider anybody that probably 13 years old and older is entering adulthood. And then of course you mature over the years and so on and become more and more mature. And so here's some financial facts of life I want to share with you, some thoughts I want you to have. First of all, a question: what kind of a life can an adult have if she or he can earn $25 per hour or more in a modest cost of living area in the United States in 2019, today? What are your thoughts on that? What kind of a life could you have as an adult if you could make $25 an hour or more? Well, here's my belief. I think that if the adult is single, then the adult can work part-time for about 20 hours a week, which would be $500 a week, and live a pretty good life from a financial perspective. In fact, two such adults could room together, and they'd have a combined budget of about $4,000 a month. And in a modest cost of living area, like in mid-Indiana, for example, where I live, that's a very good living. You could have a very, very nice life for that. Or, if you didn't want to room with someone, an adult could live with some older person as a tenant and maybe a helper and live a pretty comfortable life on $2,000 a month. And that's very common too. There are a lot of older people that would love to rent a room out almost for nothing, probably, if you would help them out some and keep them company. And that can be a pretty good life. And there's lots of other ways too, but these are just two of the things you could do. Now, if that's the case and you were working 20 hours per week, then that means you can do lots of other interesting things with the remaining 148 hours in your week. Would you agree with that? After all, I'm aiming this primarily at young adults today, although they're parents too. This is something a parent should be discussing with their child. I certainly discussed with my three children, and by the way, to a great extent they did what I'm talking about here. I certainly did what I'm talking about. Well, okay, suppose that you're earning $500 a week for 20 hours of part-time work. Well, then you're going to find out that you can learn lots of other things very quickly. If you use the local library, if you use online sources, there's lots of them today. You can learn from other students where there are other students and teachers. And in fact, many teachers are eager to help students learn, even if the student's not enrolled in a particular class with them. Now, if you are an adult that is the breadwinner in a family, then you probably have to work 40 hours a week or more at the $25. And that'd be $1,000 a week. And $1,000 a week or $4,000 a month will provide a pretty comfortable living for most families in a modestly cost area like the middle of the United States. I'm not saying this would be true in New York City or San Francisco where things are so high, but it's certainly true in mid-America. Now, when I say adult, I'm really talking about man or woman, male or female, that's no longer a child, so probably 13 years old and older. You're a very, very young adult when you're 13, and you're just entering probably junior high or middle school. And then as you get older, I don't think you become probably a mature adult until your late 20s, mid to late 20s. In my case, I think I was in my early 30s before I became what I consider a mature adult, if I ever did. But that's, that's arguable. Okay, now, here's a question. How are you going to achieve a $25 an hour income legally as an adult? Well, obviously to do that, you've got to learn some skill that somebody will pay you $25 an hour for your skill. Isn't that pretty obvious, isn't it? Well, actually, I think that's fairly easy to do today. And here's what my advice then is to you as a student, a young adult. Learn to plan and learn such a skill as quick as you can. So how are you going to do that? Well, first of all, try to figure out what kind of a skill that you think you would enjoy learning and practicing. There's thousands of different things out there that it could be. It can be any kind of a service or any kind of an activity that people will pay for. And there's just an almost unlimited number of those things. You got to think about that. Now, when you're young, look at what other people are doing and say, oh, I think I might like to do that. Maybe you want to be a mechanic. Maybe you want to be an electrician, a plumber, a landscaper, or whatever. Or maybe you want to teach some skill. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's acting. It could be art, whatever. Anyway, figure out some kind of a skill you think you might like. And then find somebody that has this skill, really has a good skill, and go to them and offer to work as an assistant in order to learn this skill. Tell them that's what you want to do. Say, I admire you, I admire what you're doing, I want to learn your skill, and I'll work for you as an assistant. Now, I'll offer to work for free at first, if you have to. I've actually had people do that with me. They started for free. But then once they begin to learn something, the skilled person, if they're reasonable and fair, will start paying you, and they'll pay you more and more as you become more valuable as an assistant. In fact, I had one assistant that started out. He offered to work for free. I actually paid him minimum wage because of the wage laws at the time, which was, I don't remember now, not very much an hour. And by the end of the year, he was making good money because he was very good. He became very valuable. In fact, at the end of the year, he left me and went to work for another company, making even more money. It was great. Now, you might find a company that will do this, but that's not too likely with a large company. They don't tend to do that unless they have maybe an apprentice program or an internship. More likely it's going to be some small company or some independent worker. But there's more and more of those today. More and more of those today. So go find something. Now, obviously, in order for this to work out, you have got to learn to learn. Learn to learn. You've got to learn how to learn. Well, that means you've got to have discipline, and you've got to have a long-term view of your life, because you got to show up on time. You got to work hard. You got to ask questions. You got to listen. You got to practice. You got to make mistakes. Learn from your mistakes. Learn how to deal with people. All that is part of learn to learning. By the way, I have 3 children, and all of them did this starting when they were very, very young. Learn to learn. I actually had my children work on some jobs when they were, even before they became adults, just to begin to learn. And there's lots of ways that you can pay them. You don't have to pay them in money. You can pay them with other things. But learn to learn. And the sooner you start learning to learn, you start feeling success. You start having self-esteem. You start feeling good. I find that young people love to work if they're doing something they enjoy doing. Now, let's suppose that you decide that you're going to choose some technical skill you want to learn. Well, then your challenge now, obviously, is going to get to someone to hire you to be an assistant to learn that technical skill. And if it's a technical skill, then here's something that I believe you need to understand. You're going to need to know what I call workforce math. I've talked about it in this book. We have a website called Workforce Math you can go look at. And this is what you need, the math you need, if you're going to learn some technical field. And so the thing you're going to probably want to do in order to get a job like this, an assistant job, is first learn some workforce math. So I think that's the first thing you should do, is learn some workforce math. Now, if you're going to a school, like a high school or a middle school, and if your school will teach you workforce math, that is wonderful, great, go for it. Unfortunately, most schools today don't teach workforce math. They teach what I call the standard math curriculum, which is a long, long way from workforce math, and I've talked about that in other chapters in this book. Well, you're going to have to learn it. And if you're going to learn workforce math, actually learning workforce math will also, you'll be learning to learn. Remember, I said that's what you have to do. You have to learn to learn. And if you learn workforce math, that means you're learning to learn. And of course, not only are you learning to learn, you're now learning math. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, really. When you study workforce math, you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're learning math, but you're also learning to learn. And that's called workforce maturity. Learning to learn is what some people like to call workforce maturity. I call it that. Now, if your school will not or cannot teach you workforce math, and that's often the case, then you're going to have to homeschool yourself. I put that in quotes. You can homeschool yourself on almost any subject. With modern technologies that's available, you can homeschool on virtually anything. Now, it's valuable if you have some adult that will coach you. I have a whole chapter on coaching in the book that you should have read, and it would be nice if you could get a coach. Otherwise, you got to coach yourself. Now, Thanks to modern technologies, you're going to be able to do this in just a few months and at a very low cost. In fact, most of the cost in learning workforce math, if you use, say, our program, for example, is going to be your efforts. You're going to put a lot of effort into it, and that's what it's going to be. And so that's what I advise you to do if you're interested in any kind of a technical field and getting a technical skill where you can make $25 or more an hour. And by the way, I did this. I started working at all kinds of jobs when I was 13 years old. I entered the 7th grade in Greencastle, Indiana, and I started working all kinds of jobs, painting and delivering papers and setting pins in a bowling alley. That's not a job exists anymore, and lots of things. But one of the things I learned was I was learning math. I was actually learning workforce math on my own. It's a long story, and I'll tell it other places. But I got to the point where I could actually help other people learn. A lot of times, teaching something that you've gotten good at is a way to make money. For example, if you're good at music, you can teach other people music. If you're good at dancing, you can teach other people dancing. If you're good at hairdressing, teach other people, whatever. And people pay for that. Well, I actually made, by the time I went to college, I started, in grad school, I started making, in today's dollars, about $35 an hour tutoring. Now, I didn't start at that. I started less than that. But it's not hard to develop a skill where people will pay you $25 an hour or more. Now, a question for many, many young people is, what about college? Oh, my goodness, everybody, got to go to college, got to go to college. College graduates make so much more than high school grads. Well, I don't know if I believe that or not. I'm not sure that's really true, but let's assume that you're interested in college for whatever reason. Maybe your family wants you to go to college, or maybe you heard about it, your friends are going, but you're not ready to go into debt, and you're not sure exactly what you want out of college. Well, then what should you do? Here's what I recommend you do. Go to some college town, some town that has a university or college in it that you might want to go to, and go to work there part-time with your skill you've developed. Now, mind you, if you start developing a skill when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, by the time you're 17 or 18 or 19, you should have the skill. You ought to be able to make $25 an hour by the time you're in your late teens or early 20s. That should be your goal. And if you're not, if you get a late start, that's okay. It doesn't matter. But believe me, today your life expectancy is like 80 years. And so a few years when you're young to do the right thing is fine. So go to some college town. Now, if you go to this college town and work part-time, 20 hours a week, let's say, then you got a lot of time to do with the other 148 hours a week. So you start associating with college students. Go where they are. Go to the library. Go to the student union, go to the restaurants, go to the hangout places, and start talking to college students. They won't know you don't have to lie to them, but you don't have to tell them. You just say, hey, I'm interested in college. I'm interested in stuff. What are you studying? What are you finding? Who are the good professors? Blah, blah, blah. Begin to learn from them. You'll learn a lot from college students. I learned as much from my fellow college students as I did from my professors when I was in college. Maybe you want to audit some courses if the college will let you do that. Most colleges will let you do it. If you're unobtrusive about it, go sit in on some classes. Participate in the college scene. You got lots of time. If you're only working 20 hours a week, which is all you have to, if you're making $25 an hour, you can live a pretty good life on that. Now, it ought to be a lot of fun. And here's something I'll tell you. Here's something you'll find interesting. A lot of the students you talk to are going to envy you. You know why? You're financially independent from your parents. You're earning your own way. You're making your own living. You're making $25 an hour or more. They're going to admire that. You're going to have a lot of self-esteem. You're going to have a lot of admire, and you're going to gain maturity. I'll tell you something. Every year when you're a teenager, you get a lot more mature than you were the year before. It's almost an exponential growth thing. It's really pretty amazing. I was a lot more mature when I was 18 than I was when I was 17, and then much more at 19, and on and on. Now, at some point, it does begin to level out. But I kept getting more and more mature year after year after year, and I think most kids do if you're growing. Now, if after you spend some time in this college town and you enjoy the college life and you say, well, I want to go to college now. I want to acquire some credential or some specialized advanced knowledge that I have to go to college for. Well, by this time, you might be able to earn a scholarship. Well, if not, then go to some good state school. Now, there are many, many really excellent state schools all across the country. So let's just use a hypothetical. Let's say you want to go to the University of Illinois in Champaign, Illinois. That's a really top school in many fields, so let's say it's in the field of your interest. But you live in some other state, so it's going to be expensive if you enroll from another state. Well, don't. Here's what you're going to do. Go to Champaign, Illinois, and for at least a year, work part-time like I already talked to you about, and just get to meet college students and establish an Illinois residency. Get an Illinois driver's license. Live in Illinois. Become an Illinois resident. You can do that in any state virtually. I think about a year will get you established in any state. And while you're doing that, you're going to learn all about the University of Illinois. You're going to talk to the students. You're going to talk to professors. You're going to audit some classes. You're going to study things on your own. You're going to enjoy college life and all of that. Now you're a resident. So now you enroll as an Illinois resident, pardon my spelling, and you're going to pay in-state tuition, which isn't usually high at these schools. Now you're probably going to be able to pay your way through college with part-time work during the school year, 15, 20 hours a week, and full-time work during your vacation time. Remember, you got a skill, $25 an hour. Do the math. If you can't do the math, you get to study some math. It's very easy to do. Now, here's the other thing I'll tell you. When you go to a school, you want to get into the advanced classes in your chosen major field ASAP. So here's what I would do. I would audit the beginning courses when you're first there, before you even enroll as a student. Audit some of the beginning courses. You can learn them very quickly. Most of them are very easy to learn. They're not difficult at all. And then when you enroll and get to know some of the professors, then when you enroll in school, go to your professor and say, like, I don't need this basic class. I'm ready for your advanced class. And they'll let you take it. They'll make an exception for you. Believe me, just the professor rule everything. By the way, the bosses in these schools are the professors. They are the bosses. And they can pretty much get you what you need. And if they like you and believe in you, believe me, they'll get you into the courses. Now, while you're auditing the courses when you're first there, you're going to meet and befriend some of these leading professors. Go to the, it's easier than you think. Stay after class, for example, if you've audited class, and ask some good questions. Now, you get to research these questions first. Don't ask stupid questions. Ask good questions. Visit them during their office hours. Just go to their office hours if they have them. Go to department teas they have. They have department meetings you can go to. Anybody can go to them. You just go. Now, after a year or two, as you've been doing this, you're probably going to get a scholarship or maybe a paid internship. If you're good and you get into the advanced classes, you get that. That happened with all of my children. They went to a state school. They went to Indiana University, because we're from Indiana. They were already in-state students. And right away, they got scholarships and internships because they were good. They got into their advanced field, and they did great. But you don't want to go to college till you're ready. You got to have an idea what you want to get out of it. Don't just go to be going to college as a paid student. You can go there as a visitor for sure. Now, the goal, obviously, if you go to college, is to graduate with a degree and a credential and great recommendations in your chosen field and no school debt. Now, this may take you an extra 2 or 3 years over a regular college student, but that's fine. You're going to have more maturity. You're going to have better recommendations. You're going to be more mature, and you're going to have, I said, no debt. That should be no debt. We'll change that in the notes. And also think how proud your family is going to be of you. My goodness. You went to college. You earned it on your own. You got your degree. You've done well in college. You get good recommendations. And that's going to lead you now into a profession of your choice. And then you're going to make a heck of a good living. If you go into a top-notch profession from a good school, now you're going to be talking $50, $75, $100 an hour. Okay? That's the kind of life you're going to have, if that's the way you want to go. You don't need to do that. And by the way, the reason you should do that is not the money. You should do it because you love the field. Do not go into some field just to make money if you don't enjoy the field. I can tell you a lot of college graduates I know that went into a field because they just wanted to make a lot of money, and then once they got in it, they hated it and didn't like it, but they had student debt they had to pay, and they were stuck. It's almost like it's not like being in prison, but it's a sort of a prison. Okay, now let's compare this to the student that drops out of high school with no particular knowledge or skill, or for that matter, graduates from high school with no particular knowledge or skill. I don't care what the minimum wage bill has ever passed. I don't care if they get to $15 an hour minimum wage. So what? That's not a good financial situation. And if you learn some valuable skill, you're going to do much better than that. Minimum wage laws, by the way, are a scam. They really have a bad, that's a bad thing. It keeps people from entering the workforce, and it shouldn't. You're never going to make a living wage based on the minimum wage in almost any place you go. Believe that. Routine jobs that you can learn in just a few days aren't going to pay very much, and usually they don't lead to better jobs. I'm not saying don't do them when you're young. Sometimes you got to do it to get started and to maybe feed yourself. But I'd much rather go and work as an assistant at something I wanted to learn and make less money than flipping hamburgers at a hamburger joint that takes very little skill and doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't pay very much. Anyway, these routine jobs are disappearing, for crying out loud. Smart machines are replacing these routine jobs more and more often. Just go look at the cashiers at Walmart and look at the self-checkout. How much longer do you think cashier jobs are going to be available? They don't pay very much, I'm sure. They look awfully boring. It's hard work. It's kind of pitiful. Well, our economy is changing rapidly, and you've got to develop skills that are consistent with the needs of the evolving job market. In fact, what you have to do is you have to learn to learn. You're going to spend the rest of your life learning because jobs are going to come and go. You may be teaching in 1972, you may be teaching kids how to use slide rules and trig tables, and then the calculator comes along, and that job's gone. And of course, as I've told you in other places, that I've experienced that, and it was a trauma for the teachers. Learn to learn. Now, the technical skills that you learn in workforce math and keep on learning more and more as your life evolves. You're going to learn more and more, and workforce math is going to be a very valuable foundation for learning more and more technical skills as life goes on. I personally believe that life in the United States of America is going to be financially great for anyone who learns to learn and acquires a valuable skill, and probably more and more of them over a lifetime, more and more skills. Math is sort of a universal language. It's going to open up many career paths, many of which don't even exist today. That happened for my children. They learned math, and they ended up doing jobs that when they graduated from high school did not exist. But because of their background, their ability to learn and their background, they were able to learn the new skills and go forward. And they've been extremely successful in their lives, very successful, and so forth. But it's because they learned to learn, and they did that. Now, I believe that for people interested in technical things, it all starts with workforce math. And so that's what this book's all about. It gets you started. Then if you want to go on into other fields like STEM and so on, this is the foundation, and you go from there. So this is Craig Hain. I hope this has been meaningful to you. Whether you're a student, if you're a parent, this may be something you want to share with your student. And I think you can have an absolutely great life. And I think this applies to, and by the way, I do believe that at least 80% of all people, students, are capable of doing this. This is not just for brilliant geniuses. This is for just about everyone. Even people that have certain learning disabilities can learn this. It depends on what that disability is, but most people can do this. It's self-paced, as you know, and it's something that you learn with spike pedagogy, and it's the right content, and it's very easy to do. So this is Craig Hain. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I hope you're enjoying the book, and I'll see you on another chapter, maybe chapter 12. Bye-bye.